Hi, my name's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you the first part of my labor and delivery story. There's a good chance that some of you watching this have never watched one of my videos before, so this channel, Bedtime Bookworm, is where I typically talk about books and book-related things, books that I have read, books that I want to read, but sometimes I also share some stuff from my personal life. In the past, I have shared some of my trying to conceive journey, some videos about my pregnancy, and so I wanted to wrap that all up with a video about my labor and delivery. Before I get into the story, I want to let you know that I did have a bit of a complicated delivery. I had preeclampsia, which progressed into something called HELLP syndrome, and I did end up having a C-section. So if any of that is traumatic or triggering for you, I want to let you know ahead of time that that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I actually don't consider my birth story to be traumatic, at least not the part that I'm going to talk about today. There's some things that happened after the C-section that are kind of traumatic, but I'm going to be making a part 2 to this video that will talk more about what happened after my delivery, because that does kind of relate more to my overall health. So that'll be more of like a health update. And today's video is going to focus more on the labor and delivery part of the story. So backing up a bit to before my labor started, going into all of this during my pregnancy, I had done a lot of research, watching videos, listening to podcasts, and what I really wanted was a intervention free or minimal interventions during my labor, what some would call a natural delivery. But you know, all deliveries are natural, so I don't like that wording. But I wanted to do everything that I could to have this baby vaginally and with minimal interventions. I did go with a midwife group, but I specifically wanted nurse midwives. There are a lot of different kinds of midwives, but I specifically wanted nurse midwives that delivered at a hospital because I kind of wanted to be a little bit crunchy, but also I wanted to have the backup of like specialized medical care if I needed it. It ended up being a very good thing that I delivered at a hospital because of, well, I guess because of the preeclampsia and C-section, but also what happened after that, which again, I will talk about in a follow-up video to this one. I really loved my midwife group. They are an amazing group of ladies, even though things for my labor and delivery did not go the way that I had wanted them to. I, like I said, don't consider my labor and delivery to be traumatic because I felt empowered, and every decision that was made that led us to the C-section was made as a team between me and my midwife, and that we really like exhausted all of my options that made sense before we decided to do the C-section. So I'm really happy with my midwife experience, but I'm also really glad that I delivered at a hospital. Okay, so going into my labor, I went overdue. This was my first baby, and I went to my 40-week appointment, and my midwife mentioned that if I wanted to, I could ask for an induction at any point, which hadn't really crossed my mind at that point, and wasn't something that I had really wanted to do. But something that I guess I haven't really talked about on my channel yet because I never did a third trimester update, and at this point I'm not going to. But during my third trimester, I developed what we thought was Bell's palsy. So Bell's palsy is where like the right half of your face gets like paralyzed. And I was just having symptoms like that. The right side of my face was numb. I had some drooping in parts of my right side of my face. And it progressively got worse during my third trimester leading up to 40 weeks. The last couple weeks of my pregnancy, I was honestly in a lot of pain. I had a lot of headaches because of the stuff that was going on with my face, and I just had like facial pain kind of like in my cheekbone area and things like that, and it got to the point where I was miserable. So at my 40-week appointment, when my midwife offered or just like said if I wanted to do an induction that I could, that I was welcome to, a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, you know what? I think I do want an induction because I'm in a lot of pain and I'm miserable, and this baby is fully cooked, and even though it doesn't seem like he's ready to come on his own yet, maybe we just need like a little push to get things going, which ended up not being true. But I decided at that time to go ahead and ask for an induction just because I was in a lot of pain and just really uncomfortable from my facial symptoms from what we thought was Bell's palsy, which apparently is a thing that can happen in pregnancy. It can happen outside of pregnancy, but it's more common in pregnant women in their third trimester than it is in like your average person. So I went in for an induction at around 40 weeks and 2 or 3 days. When I got to the hospital and got all settled in my room and everything, we discovered that I had preeclampsia. And during my third trimester, I had some high blood pressure readings, but I was always able to bring them down like within normal range by just like resting and taking some deep breaths. So I would get a blood pressure reading, it would read high, they'd give me like 5-10 minutes, they'd do it again, and it seemed normal. And then even like the night before I went in for the induction, I had more high readings than normal because I would just periodically just check my blood pressure. And I also had some pain in my abdomen, like high up, which is one of those things that you read online where they say like you should call your doctor if you have this. But I was going in for an induction the next day, so I didn't think I really needed to worry about it too much. And after talking to my midwives, even in hindsight, they said like we would have just told you to wait till the morning anyway, so nothing would have really changed. But I definitely was having some signs of preeclampsia, but I wasn't super swollen. My hands were like normal swollen. I wasn't crazy swollen that I could tell. I think my face was swollen, but I didn't really think that was related to the preeclampsia. Anyways, I get there, get all checked in. I am diagnosed with preeclampsia, and that's where things really went downhill for me because it really changed the course of my delivery. When you have preeclampsia, you have to be on an IV and they give you magnesium. When you're on magnesium, you are a fall risk, which means I couldn't get out of the bed. And that was the biggest thing for me because I really had wanted to use movement and the tub and things like that to help with the induction and get things moving. I wasn't dilating, and I felt like I needed to be moving around to get the baby's head really pushing on the cervix to help open it up and everything. And I wasn't allowed to now that I had preeclampsia and I was attached to the bed basically. I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. I either needed to call the nurse to walk me to the bathroom or they brought me a bedside bathroom that I could use. So we did the low dose Pitocin, nothing was really happening. We ended up doing a Foley bulb, which is like this balloon that they put inside your cervix that they like inflate, and then that will push down on your cervix to try and open it up. So we did that, and after a while, like I think I had it in overnight, it didn't fall out on its own. They were ready to take it out, but they were able to pull it out without pulling too hard, so it was like kind of working, and I finally was at a 4 centimeters dilated, but it was like a forced 4 because it was from the Foley bulb. At that point, again, I just wasn't progressing, I wasn't dilating on my own, and we decided to go ahead and break my water. It was not a decision I made lightly because I was group B strep positive, and you have to be on antibiotics when you have that, and like the longer your water is broken during labor, there's like an increased risk of stuff. And so I didn't want my water to be broken for a long time before I had the baby, but I didn't know what else to do because he wasn't coming, I wasn't progressing, and a lot of times breaking your water can help progress labor. So I decided to go ahead and do it, and I will say that after breaking my water, my contractions got a lot more intense. I guess something that I forgot to mention, one of the things that I did in preparation for trying to have a minimal intervention birth, another way to say it is a physiological birth, is I took the Hypnobabies course. It's very out there and weird, but I actually think it helped me a lot. It definitely helped me to stay stress-free or less stressed during the end of my pregnancy, and helped me to sleep at night, but it also helped me during this part of my labor when my contractions did get more intense, because at the time I really didn't want to get an epidural, and the Hypnobaby stuff really helped me to like breathe through the contractions. Hypnobabies is actually like really intense. I worked so hard at the end of my pregnancy. I did Hypnobabies, which took multiple hours a day, like 2 to 3 hours a day. I was trying to walk most days, not so much like the last month of pregnancy. I was doing spinning babies, like yoga sequences, to help get my baby in the best position for not only inducing labor, but having an easier labor. Like I was trying really hard not to have him be sunny side up and things like that. So I worked really hard towards the end of my pregnancy to make my labor experience like as easy as possible, and just none of it ended up panning out for me. And I think a lot of it had to do with the preeclampsia and being stuck in the bed, because movement is so important in getting baby in the right position and getting him out. Anyways, back to my story. We broke my water. I had some really intense contractions, so that definitely amped up my contractions. I really had to use my hypno babies to stay calm and definitely not pain-free, but to, like, you know, breathe through those contractions. And there were a few times that my uterus hyper contracted. There's another word for that, but basically I had contractions that were like on top of each other, and that was really hard. Like not having breaks between the contractions when they were that intense, which I was still only at 4 centimeters, so they weren't like as intense as they could be, but they were pretty intense. Not having breaks between them made it really hard. Like having breaks makes all the difference. And then also the fact that I was like stuck in the bed and I couldn't use movement, which was one of the things that I was wanting to use, not only to get him in a good position, but to use for pain relief or pain management. I couldn't do it. I was stuck in bed. That was really frustrating and difficult. Anyways, we broke my water, hoping that would help progress my labor, help me to dilate more. It didn't work. The timeline is really fuzzy at this point because I'm filming this at 3 months postpartum. But later that evening, I decided to go ahead and get an epidural because I still wasn't dilating. The contractions were intense, and like I said, I had a few that were just like right on top of each other and I wasn't getting breaks, and I knew that I was kind of heading in the direction of a C-section and I would need an epidural at that point anyways. So I was just kind of out of options. I didn't have the labor management techniques that I had planned and wanted to use, like movement, labor ball, water therapy. I couldn't do any of the things that I had planned to do to help manage the pain. And so I decided to go ahead and get the epidural, and we decided at that point that I would sleep with, it was evening, so I would sleep with the epidural, and if by morning I still wasn't progressing, then we'd really have to consider a C-section, or basically was planning on having a C-section in the morning if things weren't improving. And so I went to bed that night, not in any pain, which was nice from the epidural, and just really hoping that in the morning I will have magically dilated and I could just push this baby out and finally meet my son. But unfortunately, when I woke up in the morning, I still had not dilated anymore. I was still at a 4. Maybe I was at a 5, but I don't think so. I think I was still at a 4. It wasn't happening. And so I knew at that point that I was going to have a C-section. I also woke up on Saturday morning. This is the day of the delivery. I woke up feeling really strange, just like really out of it. And my midwife said that it was probably the magnesium drip, the medicine that they had me on to help control my preeclampsia, because that can make you feel a little loopy. From there is where things get real crazy, slash I have a lot of holes in my memory from the day of my son's birth, which is emotionally very hard for me because I wish I remembered a lot more of it. But at that point, I was, going to get a C-section. I actually don't remember getting prepped for the C-section or going to the C-section room or any of that. I do remember being in the operation room, and my mom was there with me. And it was really funny because I remember her asking me, "Do you think they've started yet?" And I had watched other labor and delivery stories and some with C-sections. The doctors always tell you you're going to feel a lot of pressure and like tugging and things like that. And I wasn't feeling anything. And I was like, "No, Mom, they haven't started yet." And they definitely had started. They pulled him out like right after I told her they haven't started. And I remember I couldn't see him, but my mom took a picture with her phone of them holding my son up, showing him to my mom and everything. And then from there, I do remember going to the recovery room, and I wanted to, the golden hour and being skin to skin for a while and things like that. But then once again, that's where I lose some of my memories and I don't remember a lot of stuff. I do remember being in the recovery room, but I don't remember what happens after that, which is what I'm going to be talking about in my part 2 video. So I guess that's my labor and delivery story. I really wanted a natural or physiological birth with minimal interventions. I really wanted to be able to like walk and use movement and to use a labor ball or an exercise ball to manage my pain and to get the baby down and out. And I also really wanted to use the bathtub, the water, to help manage my pain. And just none of that ended up happening, pretty much because I had preeclampsia, and from there I was stuck in my bed. Oh, and also this was really frustrating for me. At some point towards the end of my induction, I learned that the baby had turned sunny side up, which is where the baby's facing up. So when a baby comes out, they're supposed to be facing down. No, that's not right. Anyways, he was facing the wrong way. I used to know all of this, but I have pushed it all out of my mind. But he was facing the wrong direction, and that can just make labor and delivery a little bit harder. And he'd kind of gotten stuck, basically, is what we have figured out. He was also kind of big for me. He was almost 8 pounds, and I am a very small person. I'm pre-pregnancy 100 pounds and 4'9". Like, I'm not even 5 foot. And so I made a kind of big baby. He just had a really hard time getting out, and that's why we ended up having the C-section. But what I was going to say is I was really frustrated to find out that he had turned sunny side up, because towards the end of my pregnancy I had done a lot of stuff, a lot of hard work as far as exercising and being very cognizant of how I'm sitting to make sure that he did not turn sunny side up. And he had not been sunny side up for like weeks before my delivery. And I 100% blame being stuck in my hospital bed for like 3 days straight as the reason for him turning the wrong direction and probably stalling out my labor. But anyways, that is my labor and delivery story. Basically, nothing went the way that I wanted. I went into this trying to be flexible. They always say, you know, you can have a plan, but you never know what's going to happen. Like, you can have a labor plan or a birth plan, but it's more like birth preferences. And I totally get that, and I definitely had that attitude going in, and that's why I was trying to be so flexible. But my labor and delivery ended up being so very different, more so related to what happened after the C-section, which I will talk about in another video. But yeah, like, you expect to take a few left turns in your plan, but my labor and delivery was more like a bunch of 360s and U-turns, and I ended up in a very different place than where I was expecting to be. While nothing went the way that I wanted, like I said, I don't consider my labor and delivery to be traumatic, just because I did feel listened to and empowered every step of the way, making the decisions that I made. I think it's so important to be educated about your options so that you know what your options are and you can feel good about the decisions that you make. I will also say that my C-section wasn't nearly as like scary as I thought it would be. It wasn't really an emergency C-section at the time, but it did kind of turn into an emergency at the same time, because my preeclampsia had developed into HELLP syndrome, which that's an acronym, HELLP, if you want to look it up. But that's where your preeclampsia gets really bad, and your like liver enzymes and your kidneys, like, they all kind of go really crazy. Your platelets, which is like how you clot, aren't working, and so I had so many bruises. So HELLP is actually pretty dangerous and life-threatening. I didn't know I had HELLP syndrome until after I had delivered my son. But yeah, my preeclampsia got really bad. The whole time during my labor, I thought my preeclampsia was kind of under control because my blood pressure was kind of okay, but apparently all the other stuff was not okay, like my liver enzymes and my kidney enzymes, I guess, kidney function, that kind of stuff. Finding out afterwards that I actually had HELLP syndrome was kind of scary, and I also had a lot of bruising and things like that. Anyways, I'm gonna stop the story here as far as my labor and delivery. So if that's all you're interested in, that's how my son came into the world. Nothing went according to plan, but it's okay. My C-section was fine, and my C-section recovery actually was pretty good, but I had some crazy things happen after I had the C-section. We found out this health thing, this bigger health thing that is still affecting me that I will talk about in my next video. So if you're interested in hearing about that, you can watch that video when it comes out. But I figured a lot of people are just interested in labor and delivery and not necessarily would be interested in what happened to me after my labor and delivery. So yeah, that is my labor and delivery story. I ended up having an induction and then preeclampsia that turned into HELLP syndrome that turned into a C-section. It was kind of crazy, not what I expected, not what I wanted, but it is what it is, and I got a healthy baby boy out of it, so it's fine. All that really matters in the end is having healthy baby and healthy mom, although I can't say that I'm totally healthy, but that is what is important. Anyways, if you guys are watching this because you're pregnant and you are going to be giving birth soon, I wish you guys all the best. And I hope that you have an easier time than I did. But just know that sometimes things don't go according to plan, and that's okay. I just hope that you feel empowered and listened to during your labor and delivery, because that is so important to not having a traumatic birth experience. Alright guys, I'm going to end it here. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bookworms, this is my normal outro. Keep reading. Doesn't really make sense for this video, but I will see you guys next time. And if you want to know what happened to me after my C-section, watch the next video. Thanks. Bye.